All right, something that I've been meaning to do here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Of course, if you're watching this, we got a special crossover episode. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. For those that don't know, you can call me T Frank. I'm the host and the film analyst over at Blue White Illustrated and the BWI Live Show. Spencer Holbrook and I are getting together to talk about Penn State, Ohio State coming up this weekend. So just because I initiated the conversation, I'm kicking things off here. But Spencer, thanks for taking the time to do this, and I'm excited to share some information and kind of share what we know about these two teams leading into what should have been one of the best games of the year this year, but is decidedly not at this point.
Yeah, I think it's cool that we're gonna put this on both YouTube channels. Let each other's fan bases get a little taste of what goes on around the YouTube sphere for other programs and their coverage in the On3 network. It's a great network, and I'm really happy to be here with you. Yeah, I mean, this is so weird to talk about the game this week because we are almost it's like a code in our brain that tells us like Ohio State, Penn State, top 10 matchup, huge implications, Big Ten championship. It used to be Big Ten East. Now it's Big Ten championship on the line, basically. I know last year was kind of a weird way to do that, but it is so weird to kind of reprogram our brains to think like 4-3 against 7-0, and it just doesn't have the same juice. But I mean, the talent is still there, man.
Yeah, but decidedly, and I think that this is a fair thing to say, this is a bad football team. This is a bad Penn State football team that is, despite that talent, not playing in a way that is getting the most out of the sum of the parts. And that has been really there's some very obvious things of why that's happened, and there's maybe been some overestimation of some of the talent on the roster, but the lack of fit at Penn State this year has just been astounding. They've had years where they've worked through stuff and it hasn't been perfect, but they've made it work. This is the first time, like in the James Franklin era, unless you go back to Christian Hackenberg and like the very first years with James Franklin, that there has been a total misfit of players, personnel, coaches, all that stuff. And here are the consequences for it, right? Here we sit in the middle of the consequences for those decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost the bill comes due. I know, the bill always comes due for these college football programs. And I think of the 2021 Ohio State team that had CJ Stroud and was just ultra talented, but the bill came due for Ryan Day and the hires that he made on defense. James Franklin's gotten away with some of the things that he's done with the Penn State program that you guys have very rightfully been critical of in past years. And, the Jim Knowles decision, and while I think he's one of the best defense coordinators in the country, hiring him in a make or break year, maybe is not, the direction that he could have gone with that. Kodolnicki, I think, is a brilliant offensive mind. Drew Aller as the pilot of that compared to, when he was doing it with Jalen Daniels and the mobility of that and all those things. Maybe that in year 3, but because I think of it like, some of these offensive coordinators, like I think of like an Andy Ludwig who used to be at Utah. Like if you give him these two running backs and Drew Aller, you're probably calling 11-1, 12-0, but the fit just might not be there. And so, I just wonder if like it was just a bad year to have the all-in year for Penn State, and at the same time for Ohio State, it's like this is a great year for them to be resetting with the talent that they have. And so now these two ideas kind of collide, and you're seeing a 20-point spread, and it is unfortunate to see, but it's an interesting case study in like two programs that want to be so similar. But are not seeming to be similar right now.
The funny thing is, I've been watching the film this week of Ohio State, and you get programmed in, like you said, this is a top 10 matchup. When you think Ohio State, if you're a Penn State fan, you think 3 wide receivers, you think airing it out, you think deep shots. Julian Sayin is running a version of Andy Kodolnicki's offense that James Franklin envisioned, is what I see, is like this ground and pound, physical 2 tight end system, but with elite wide receivers and the ability to, when you need to, throw the football. They're not a pass first team despite Jeremiah Smith from what I've seen. So like, I guess what's it been like on that reset year for you to be covering this? And I guess were you surprised by that, of talking about the direction of those teams? Because I feel like I'm watching something where I've seen this movie before. If I can see why certain Ohio State fans are frustrated with the run game because they're committing to it. And it's like, you've got Jeremiah Smith. Just chuck him the football as many times as it takes to get 48 points.
And they did that against Wisconsin, and it worked to great effect. They knew that Wisconsin's run defense probably stronger. Well, not probably, but is stronger than the pass defense. And so, hey, they came out and threw it almost every play in the first drive and had 89 passing yards and -1 rushing yards on the first drive of the game. It was pretty remarkable to see. And like, they have that gear, they can do that. But
Yeah.
like, hey, they've got these two running backs, freshman running backs that are pretty good too. And you know, they want to be able to run the football. They know that bad weather's coming in November. They know that you're going to have to do some running of the football in the college football playoff. They know that, you know, is it in Julian Sayen's best interest to hand him a full plate in the opener against Texas? They knew that it wasn't, and so they didn't do that. He had 126 passing yards in the first game. Now he's an 80% passer because instead of giving him that Jeremiah down there somewhere offense in the first 3 weeks of the season, they gave him a little bit more each week. And as you see him progress, now not only is he accurate by trade and has the quick release by trade, but now he's also confident in his system that he's running. And so then you give him a game plan against a Wisconsin that says, hey, now we trust you. Go out there and throw it 42 times. And there's 36 of 42 for 393 and 4 touchdowns. The Penn State game, I don't know what exactly they're going to do to challenge this Jim Knowles defense. Ryan Day knows it extremely well, but you know, he's a guy that they've just kind of brought along. And I think once they realized how elite this defense was going to be, they had the ability to bring Julian Sayin along. And that is not something that you can do with a lot of 5-star quarterbacks. A lot of times the 5-star quarterbacks want to be able to chuck it deep and do all of those things and give it to the 5-star receivers. Julian, I think, was unselfish in a way of where he knew this defense is good enough. We're going to bring you along. And by November, you're going to be really, really confident. And it's been fascinating to watch.
Yeah. What is, I want to jump into that conversation about Julian Sayin because I find him fascinating watching him throw, and like his accuracy into tight windows is exceptional. But, you know, it's early in his career, as you just mentioned, and all those things factor in. So I'm not trying to get you to say, like, is he the next CJ Stroud or whatever? Like, is he the next first-round quarterback? What's his trajectory to you so far of what you've seen? Because you've been covering this team for a while to see a lot of these different iterations of Ohio State quarterbacks. And the lineage is a little bit better, and there's more diverse comparison than maybe there would be at Penn State. So where is he in that trajectory in your mind?
I think it is a little bit like the 2021 CJ Stroud season where he's throwing to Garrett Wilson, he's throwing to Chris Olave, he's throwing to a tight end like Jeremy Ruckert, and you're looking at it and you're saying, hey, this guy is just kind of he's just driving the bus and he's keeping it between the lines. And then in 2022, you look at it, you're like, hey, is this guy the best quarterback in America? He might be. I'm raising my voice a little bit because he might be.
You got that question mark that starts in the middle of the sentence? Yeah.
Julian kind of reminds me of that this year, except I think his growth has been a little more linear where it's just been straight up, where CJ went through a stretch in September where, do I even want to do this anymore? Is this for me? And then he had to find that next gear. Julian's just kind of steadily got into that next gear. Everybody questions, well, when you throw to Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and Max Clare, the Purdue transfer, and you've got these running backs who you can check it down to and turn it into 15 yards. Like, of course he's going to be accurate and good. And I think over time, you're going to see that conversation shift, because just because you're throwing to elite weapons doesn't mean the guy throwing it isn't good too.
Oh yeah. The ball placement, I think, is the big part of this conversation. If you can throw to elite guys and then they can make great plays, but if you're putting in a position where they don't have to go make a spectacular play, that's the quarterback delivering. And like I've seen him deliver, especially on some of those vertical passes and over the middle too, being willing to put the ball over the middle to those tight ends or to Carnell Tate in those contested catch situations. I think like there's a little bit of, you've got the play wrapped up, there's great coverage, and it doesn't matter, like, because the quarterback is throwing an accurate ball and the receiver is going to win it literally 90% of the time in Carnell Tate's situation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that Sayin has done a really good job of, and I'll transition this into asking you about Penn State's offense so we don't just sit here and talk Ohio State the whole time. I think Sayin has done a great job of manipulating pockets. Ohio State was not good along the offensive line against Wisconsin. Straight up, 100% not good. And he faced a lot of leaky offensive line play. And on the first touchdown to Carnell Tate, he had to buy time, roll, or basically slide step to his left, get out of a messy pocket, and deliver a strike down the field. And he did it. He had to roll out of the pocket to his right because he was getting major pressure on the last touchdown of the game and deliver a perfect pass to Brandon Ennis, because if it wasn't perfect, it was either going to be intercepted or incomplete. And he did it. So his ability to shuffle his feet, stay poised, stay present, and still deliver downfield. The only time I've ever seen an Ohio State quarterback handle a messy pocket that way was the 2022 Peach Bowl when Ohio State almost beat Georgia. And it was C.J. Stroud's finest hour, even in a losing effort. And so that's the next step for him with saying is like, if he's doing that in the pocket, then even if you get pressure on him, you can only cover for so long. And if he's making guys miss behind the line of scrimmage and still keeping his eyes downfield, how do you defend this passing game? And I guess, you
just made Penn State fans throw up in their mouth because mobile quarterbacks have been a huge problem for Penn State this year. Is it one last question? Like, is he a guy that can get yards with his feet? I haven't seen that from him, but is he a guy that if he gets out and he decides, is he going to run or is he just scrambling to buy time?
Yeah, he got 15 on a 3rd and 16 on the first drive of the game at Washington. They ended up not converting that 4th and 1 because of some bad blocking assignments there on 4th and 1 that they've kind of cleaned up since then. But that's beside the point. Yeah, he can. Against Wisconsin, we were absolutely stunned. My jaw was on the floor because he did a zone read and just pulled it and got 8 yards on I think 2nd and 10. And it's like, hey, now you're ahead of the chains on 3rd, and you got 3rd and short.
Yeah,
he can. That doesn't mean that he's going to as much as, I don't want to, open pass wins, but as much as like, he's not going to Nico Iamaleava the Penn State defense. But like, if Denai Dennis Sutton's in his face and he makes him miss, he can get 6 yards in an open field, slide down and get a first down on 2nd and 4 that he probably just wasn't expecting to get. Like, those are the kind of mobility things that he can do, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be like something that he's, infatuated with doing or looking to do, but it's something that he can do. If you give him a lane, he's going to probably take it, and he's smart enough to do that. Man, like, I guess I'll ask you, like, Ethan Grunkemeyer, obviously that first start at Iowa wasn't great, but like this Penn State offense under him now, because you kind of just have to spin it entirely from veteran Drew Aller. You know what you're going to get. You're probably not going to get a lot of deep stuff, but you're going to avoid some of the mistakes in the passing game. It seems like it's a reset there. Like, what's this offense with Grunkemeyer? Like, what do you think that the offense is?
They tried to have it be, I don't want to say the same, but similar to what they had with Aller because they have similar skill sets. Strong-armed quarterback that is a decisive and aggressive guy. That's the thing that I think from that game, and watching his high school career is pretty clear that Grunkemeyer is a guy that is going to be aggressive with the ball. He didn't make every read perfect, but he was willing to put the ball downfield and threaten the Iowa defense, which was, to his credit, something that they had needed in this offense previously. So it was a bit of a breath of fresh air in that instance. But the problem is he's decisive, and he decided a couple times to throw the ball either to the wrong location and the receiver wasn't there, or to a covered receiver who then, was batted up and intercepted. So there was some good and bad in there. I thought he operated the offense well. There's a lot on his plate pre-snap to make sure they're in the right formations and they're in the right run fits as well. So I don't think he's changing the play as much on his own as Aller was, because Aller was really operating NFL level style of being able to change the play, get everyone on the same page, get the snap countdown, and get the ball off before a delay a game. Grunkemeyer was doing more looking to the sideline, but they're not going to just run dead plays with him. So this is his second year in the offense, and what he has missed is just those reps as the number one, not necessarily the time to learn the offense and how to operate it. His biggest problem is he's been on the road for 2 games, and he's got to deal with crowd noise and all those things on top of being a first-time quarterback. So interim coach Terry Smith talked, and this is, I think, a danger in this game, is like giving him some simpler stuff, some 1 and 2 read plays. And to me, like, that's the danger in this game, because Ohio State is going to take away his first read. That's obvious. So if you've got a 1-read quarterback, you can figure out where he's going to be if his first read is gone. It's either going to be a check down or a scramble, and you can take care and predict those. So that would be my biggest concern, because he's quick, he's athletic, he can move, but he's not, I think Julian Sayin and he are in a similar boat. If he'll get you some yards, he's a scrambler, he's elusive, he's not a runner. And they tried to do a 2-quarterback system last week to incorporate some of that now that they don't have Aller under center full time. They try to go back to more of that 2-quarterback stuff last week, which did provide a spark to the run game against Iowa.
And then, but Smolik is now on the shelf too, right?
As far as so we've got some of that stuff over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com that we've been talking about there.
Perfect. Yeah.
But like I'm not expecting much from that. I mean, just from the everything that we've seen. He was at practice last week. Here's the thing. He was at practice last week. We saw him briefly as they were coming out of the practice facility because the offense had a closed install period during open practice last week. So they're doing some new stuff. There's some as you wrote about it, there's some kitchen sink stuff that I think is coming. But whether he's involved in that, I think is highly debatable because he came out of that game. He was obviously injured. I'm not predicting that he's going to be a big factor in this game personally, but we'll see. That's what they're trying to produce, is that element of mystery about does that come back onto the field. And I'm not expecting it. No.
Yeah. The kitchen sink stuff is what I think has Ohio State kind of sleeping a little, with one eye open at night this week. What does this team exactly have to lose? And I know that sounds a little cavalier, but at the same time, they're 3-4, and the next 2 games are against Ohio State and Indiana. My next question, I guess, and this is maybe the thing that I'm the most curious about with Penn State for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be really difficult to beat Ohio State in the Horseshoe. Mm-hmm. Then you play Indiana at home. Do you think there's a level of this Penn State offense, and maybe just in general, I don't think Knowles will hold anything back at all against Ryan Day and Ohio State. I think this is a little bit of a pride game on that side of the ball. Do you think this Penn State offense will look at Indiana and think, well, if we're going to get one of them, I think the better chance we have is against Indiana. So let's not put everything out there on the road at Ohio State, knowing that it might be difficult anyway. And let's try to throw as much as we can at Indiana in a home game, and maybe we can pull off an upset against Indiana. Do you think there's any part of that? I've been wondering that all week, maybe just behind the scenes. And maybe there's not an answer because they're going to say that they're going to try everything they can to win every game. But I mean, these guys watch the film, they know what's going on. And I just wonder if they think that there's a better chance of pulling off something against Indiana. Therefore, the real stuff might come out next week at home rather than this week in the Horseshoe.
I always operate. See, that's tough for me to look at film where I derive all of my truth from and assume that you're not doing everything possible to win a football game, because that is career suicide at a certain point. And I understand that these, as you just pointed out, these guys are kind of in this interim place anyway, but Terry Smith is an old school ball coach. He is a defensive guy. He's a great coach,
by the way. I like him a lot, man. I like him a lot.
I have never heard anyone say a bad thing about him. He is a well-respected, well-liked person. He's talked about basically 2 things: effort and, a willingness to try anything, I guess, but mostly it's just been about effort. He has just emphasized, again, like I was trying to say, an old school defensive ball coach, effort or you don't play. And so if you're telling the players that we want all-out effort from you, but we're not going to give all-out effort from the coaching staff for tactical reasons, that then undercuts everything you're saying. And in a certain point of leadership and all those things, if you do that and people smell BS, they are going to quit on you. And I think that's the biggest fear that everyone has around the Penn State program, is that these guys won't play for pride and that they will quit because it is such a bad season. And they have 4 losses in a row with the prospect of 6. So I don't think they can, because if they do, they might lose the locker room and lose the season. And he's already said that there's a danger of that. As he said, there's a danger of, you could see me as the substitute teacher, as the guy who is coming in as the interim head coach. And so he's had to navigate those waters. So long story. I don't think you can do that. I don't think they would do that.
I hope you don't think that that's come from a bad place. I think that that's something.
But tactically, I get what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. A little peek behind the curtain. T. Frank, we were supposed to keep this around 20 minutes. We're not even through each other's offenses. Let's just keep going, man.
Let's just keep.
I've got all the time in the world for you guys over at BWI. You guys do a great job, by the way. We've been talking to you guys up a lot over at Lettermen Row, especially because of the recruitment of Kevin Brown and some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, trying to
that's rough.
Make some hay in the recruiting area. Yeah, again, I'm not going to pour salt, into the wound, or even rubbing alcohol into the wound. But man, we've been giving you guys some credit because it's due. Like, you guys do a great job. Do you want to spin this forward to the defensive sides now, opposing defenses?
The only thing I want to ask about the run game is, what's your opinion on the Ohio State run game? Because I think it's pretty good. I think that there's more positives, I think, than I'm hearing from the from the Ohio State fan base. And then in the backfield, Bo Jackson, who was a one-time Penn State target at running back, pretty talented player. I remember the first time I saw him at a Penn State camp, it was like, oh, that's not a sophomore. That looks like a junior or a senior, and he's playing like it. So to you, is there any question about what the direction of the running game should be? And with a bye week, is that something you think that there's some more that Ohio State could get out of that section, given Penn State struggles to stop the run, which is the core of the issue for this defense? Coverage, ideas about what the defense should be in terms of their coverage and communication all aside, the biggest problem is they cannot stop the run. And so I'm curious what you think about that.
I did a double take. I was over on FB Stats or whatever that website is, College Sports. It was College Sports Reference. I highlighted the Big Ten play and saw that Penn State was giving them 202.5 yards a game on the ground in the Big Ten. And I actually reset. I clicked out of it. I came back to the page and I highlighted it again because that can't be right. I was stunned. And I've watched a lot of it, and it doesn't seem like they're giving them that much. But 200 yards on the ground a game is crazy.
It's nickel and dime the whole time. It's just nickel. It's 4 yards, then it's 6 yards, and teams are not afraid of this front. They'll go on third and short and fourth and short.
That's exactly the way Ohio State does its business running the football. It is not a home run operation whatsoever. The longest run they've had this year is 64 yards. It didn't even go for a touchdown. These running backs are not Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, where if they get in the open field, you are not catching them. Like, you can catch them. And they're not the speediest guys, but they will nickel and dime you a little bit to death. It's death by 1,000 cuts with this run game. And that's why, the average for Bo Jackson is high, but the rushing touchdowns is not. And that's why CJ Donaldson has a lot of short yards touchdown runs, because like in the red zone, they're getting to the 2 and 3 yard line. They're not getting in the end zone until they get to the 1 or 2. This run game is super interesting to me. Isaiah West, true freshman, had an injury last year, barely played as a senior in high school, from Pennsylvania, is now in the mix after a 9-carry, 55-yard performance at Wisconsin.
Man, I got to watch that Wisconsin game. I didn't make it to that one because I was like, well, they blew them out, so I'll watch the other ones that were more competitive.
It was interesting. Some of the things that they were doing offensively, I hadn't seen yet. And the other thing about the team is Ryan Day made the comment before the Wisconsin game about the run game and how they hadn't gotten to some things yet, because he was asked straight up, like, don't you wish you could just, hit a home run in the run game and finally break free for a long touchdown? And he said, yeah, we'll make sure to call that play next time. And then he made the joke that they haven't gotten to a lot in the run game. I think they've been kind of, I hate using the term vanilla because I actually like the flavor of vanilla.
Me too.
But
bad rap.
We should do that at the end of the show. But it'll be 3 hours from now. There's a lot that they haven't gotten to in the run game, but oddly, the game that they showed a lot in the run game was Grambling. And I'm not sure if they just wanted to put everything on tape to make sure that they, A, could run it and do it in a dry run against like the worst team that they'll play in the next 10 years. And then B, just put it on the tape so guys like Jim Knowles have to stew about it for 2 weeks when they get time to do that.
Yeah,
they were doing some things with motion and faking motion, almost like Sarkisian-esque, where they would fake an end around to the left side and then turn around and run counter to the right.
This is what I'm saying. This is so very Kotelnicki. There's so much more shift in motion. There's so much more run fake than I've seen from them before.
But once they get on the tape and they watch a defense and they realize, hey, we don't have to do that stuff against these guys. They just don't do it. And I think that the run game is better than what they've shown. And I've taken a lot of heat from some Ohio State fans, like, hey, you're just covering for these coaches. This run game isn't what it needs to be. Chip Kelly, would be ashamed of this run game. And, Tyler Bowen, who you guys are very familiar with, is the run game coordinator. Does he have what it takes? Can he form a run game? I think we all know that he can. We both know pretty well who he is and what he likes to do on the ground. They just haven't gotten to a lot of it. And again, the Wisconsin game was interesting because they used the 2 freshman backs more than they used the 2 veterans for the first time, and it worked. And then the other thing about the other game that, if you want to just see the diversity in the run game, the Grambling game, they're running GT counter, they're running GH counter, they're running some motions with counter. It was a lot of counter, but it was a lot of it was like 50 ways to do one thing, and they were running motions and things, and then they've just put it away since then. And so I wonder if November is the time to break all that stuff out. I think the run game is in a better spot than maybe the statistics show. I think they're going to get to some of these things, and I think you'll see some dividends paid in the run game. But the Wisconsin game, they did have some blown assignments, so maybe the offensive line isn't where it needs to be. But at the same time, I think Wisconsin's probably one of those classic Big Ten teams that sucks but has a good run defense, like we've known for the Big Ten West for so many years. Like, they're not good.
Yeah, there's still some vestiges of Wisconsin left in there from their transition under the new offensive system and defensive system, which is funny to see. Like, every once in a while, you see, oh, that's a Wisconsin body, and there's still a couple of those left on the defense, and mostly they're at linebacker and defensive tackle.
Yeah, I watch one of those Wisconsin bodies play on Sundays every week with TJ Watt now. So it's just interesting to me. I think there's some things that they haven't gotten to in the run game, and I do think heading into November, it's probably in a better spot internally than it is on the outside because they know what they can do with it, but they just haven't done it a lot. But I would encourage you as a film guy, try that Grambling tape.
I'm gonna have to go back. Yeah,
it's interesting. There's some run stuff in there that why didn't we see that against Washington? Well, that didn't come up against Illinois, and Illinois is good. Like, what are we? Wisconsin kind of stopped the run. Yeah. You could probably get to that stuff. So, but anyway, it's interesting. I'd love to pick your brain on this Jim Knowles defense, man.
So I like it. That's the problem, because I'm in the situation of, like, I was a fan, and this is the thing, is like I did go back and I watched selections from the beginning. I watched selections from Oklahoma State. I watched as much as I could historically of the defense, and so, like, I appreciated the evolution of it, and kind of some of the constraints that were at Ohio State that forced him to find Caleb Downs, develop that style that they used in 2024 to win a championship. And at its best, this is an incredibly suffocating defense. And I think that the willingness, first off, it is a very modern defense in the trend of playing too high and trying to take away explosive plays and being willing to give up some against the run. Understanding that a defense coordinator wants to give up nothing, but that is kind of the goal, is that you goad teams into running the ball against you and then you stop it. In the control of it. But that's been the problem, is they can't do the first thing, which is dare teams to run into a box that may have one linebacker in it, and then stop it for minimal gain and put the offense in a second and long situation and then a third and long situation. They haven't been able to do that part. And if you can't do that part, none of the other stuff matters, because you can't get to any of your third down coverages. You can't get to any of your surprise rotations and some of your inverted coverages that will surprise the quarterback as to where safeties are lining up and all that stuff. None of that matters if you can't control the first variable, which is built into the idea of the defense. And that's been their biggest problem. And then from there, the defensive line not getting pressure with 4, which I know is a big bugaboo at Ohio State as well. And part of that is by alignment. And part of it is, like, not having a guy that's just dominant. There's Penn State has been used to having an Abdul Carter or a Chop Robinson that just gets pressure, just wins and gets the quarterback. Denai Dennis-Sutton is not that type of pass rusher, and their guy that they were going to have to do that, Max Granville, was injured for the season back in May, I want to say it is. So there's just been a fundamental deficit that starts up front that they haven't been able to overcome. And then when they lost Tony Rojas, who was cleaning up some of these things, then, like, the floodgates open. Dom DeLuca, a former safety, a former walk-on, is not the guy to fit and fix the situation, and they just haven't had anybody else to step into the void.
Yeah, you've got to be, almost a super genius at linebacker to have full command of this thing, especially in year one. And I'm not going to rip on Jim Knowles for 30 minutes here. That's not what I'm here to do. I think he is one of the
Ohio State fans have done it for you. Let me just say, this offseason, it's been all trolling. It's been all trolling. I love the fact they're coming into our shows and they're leaving comments because it ups our algorithm impact. But man, they have been so happy to troll Penn State fans, so they've done it for you.
I think I will say this. I think the small kernel of truth in there that Ohio State fans, I think, maybe wanted Penn State fans to say in the offseason that now Penn State fans are coming to grips with is year one of this defense is not perfect. And it is very difficult. There are games where if Ohio State was missing, a Cody Simon last year, the defense was not the number one defense that was suffocating Tennessee and Oregon and Texas that in the playoff that you guys came to know.
Yeah.
There were times where if one of the cerebral guys was out, there's some trouble to be had in this defense. And with Tony Rojas now being out, you're seeing that because this defense is very complex. And anyone at Duke will tell you that. Anyone at Oklahoma State will tell you that. And anyone at Ohio State will absolutely tell you that. It's just not an easy defense. And I think that's the kernel of truth that the lunatic fringe is the lunatic fringe at Ohio State. Kirk Herbstreit gave him a name and they've completely run with it. And they will be happy to tell you anything that you don't want to hear about Jim Knowles, I promise. But the thing that they talk about that I think has some truth to it is that year one was never going to be perfect. Yeah. And that was my pushback against the effusive praise of going and landing Jim Knowles is like, and we talked about this a little pre-show, so I'm just making sure that it gets on here. James Franklin was in a natty or bust is what Ohio State called it. And I think Michigan even called it that before. Penn State was almost as close as you can get for Penn State being natty or bust. And they hired a defensive coordinator who I think is and Ryan Day said this in January when I think he knew he was out the door, the best defensive coordinator in the country, full stop. Now, I think Matt Patricia has kind of given Ryan Day a reason to think that he is. But
he wasn't in college football at that point,
exactly.
Right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
But the pushback is like year one is not perfect for this team, for this defense. And I think you're seeing that a little bit come up. And so, I love his system. I think it works. I think it's great. I think it confuses quarterbacks. I think it's good at stopping the run. Like you said, he gets you into second and long, then he can't help himself. He brings pressure. And sometimes that lets up a touchdown against Michigan in 2022 that still haunts Ohio State fans. Sometimes that means Nico Iamaleava's, squirming free for 40 yards when you're trying to get a second half stop. Like that's what year one does to this defense sometimes, because he goes to his playbook that he knows can work in year two and year three. And sometimes in year one, it just doesn't click. And I think that's something that has been something that I've noticed on film when I'm watching the Penn State defense is like, he can't help himself at times call some of that year three stuff in year one, and it does bite you.
There's a couple of things I think that were a miscalculation from James Franklin. And one is he has had this integration policy because, as covering Ohio State, the coordinator churn is intense, right? So you are going to have a new coordinator every single year, basically, if you're successful. And so James Franklin has instituted a policy of the new coordinator has to adapt the verbiage and language of Penn State so that 1 or 3 or 5 people are changing their language instead of the entire side of the ball. And so that had worked reasonably well under Tom Allen of integrating his plans and philosophies from his defense and what Manny Diaz had done previously. And the plan was to do the same with Jim Knowles. Yes, there's going to be some complicated stuff, but we're not going to get all of it in year one. And there's going to be this integration process that makes it easier to allay some of those problems. The second thing is outside of Zakee Wheatley, who has been, as advertised, the personnel fit, and I know I keep coming back to this, wasn't exactly perfect. The corners, I think, are great to play this defense. The safeties have been a little hit or miss other than Wheatley. But there were enough pieces that have felt like this could work, but they just lost the wrong ones. And that is, to your point, like, you can't go in with only plan A working. And the thing that I said even about Ohio State is the talent was versatile enough on the roster that even if they were underperforming in that first year or they were underperforming before Jim Knowles got there, they had the talent to play any scheme. Like, that's kind of the thing with Ohio State is I could look at any of those players and say they can play in an odd front, they can play in an even front, they can do that on the same play like they do now. But the question is for Penn State, did you have the personnel to do that? And they had, because of their recruiting deficiencies in specific areas, they did not have the group that could really transition to a new style as effectively, especially when they lost as many veteran defensive tackles as they did. But you don't have any of those erasers. So as good as Zakee Wheatley has been, he's not Caleb Downs. And I'm not trying to disrespect Zakee Wheatley at all, because I think he's been the only guy making plays and saving the situation. But he's also not making tackles for loss, and he's not cleaning everything up to the point of like, oh, this guy, is he Derwin James, right? Is he a top 15 pick? He's a really good football player that's going to play on Saturdays, but there's just a limit on what one player can do. And that's been kind of, I think, the miscalculation of this defense and the integration of Jim Knowles, because it does require a lot of those cerebral guys. And they were in a transition period on defense after a college football playoff run. Penn State doesn't reload the same way, and they didn't go into the portal to reload specifically on that D-line. And that was, if you listen to what Pat Kraft had to say, that was one of the reasons that James Franklin isn't here.
And I think that's, again, like I hate to keep bringing this up, but like that 2022 Ohio State team was completely bailed out by the fact that they had Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., and C.J. Stroud. And you look at what the NFL is right now, C.J. just threw for 400 yards, Emeka's catching touchdowns left and right, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player, is the best offensive weapon that the Cardinals have. Like, that's not a secret. The defense, though, they knew that they didn't have the personnel to transition because Ryan Day had exclusively been a one high safety, cover three kind of guy at Ohio State under Jeff Hafley and Kerry Combs. Those Combs failed. They went out and got Knowles. And they brought Tanner McAllister in. Tanner McAllister, and again, I think Zakee Wheatley is better than what Tanner was. But Tanner McAllister is more of a Zakee Wheatley than he is a Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft as a safety. That does not happen. And so the 2022 Ohio State defense was, hey, they're going to make some nice plays. They're going to have some explosive defensive plays, but they're going to give some things up. They're going to give up some different things as they transition to this defense with the hopes that that the next year is the real year where everything comes together. And so you saw it slowly do. It did slowly come together across 3 years. And so, I just think that's something, and Ohio State had not recruited well enough on defense to make the transition successfully in 2022. And now you saying that about this 2025 Penn State defense, man, the similarities are staggering, except Penn State didn't have CJ Stroud and some of those guys on offense to, okay, well, we need to outscore you. I guess we'll just go and outscore you now. And so
can I jump in here too? Because there are some storylines that even go back to 2022. Because part of the conversation here with James Franklin, and this is kind of a post-mortem on the situation, is he has been competing with Ryan Day for hires for years now. You know who was one of the finalists on the list for Penn State's defensive coordinator before Manny Diaz? Jim Knowles. So, like, in the opportunity to Manny Diaz moves on, Tom Allen worked kind of in this situation. If you have the opportunity to go get your original guy, the guy that was your first primary target, and you're thinking, if you're James Franklin, in the long term, you're not thinking in a microwave decision because he was always a long-term thinker. He did not do a lot of microwave things, and it was one of the biggest frustrations that Penn State fans had. He'll let a guy stay out there and work through it as a player. I think it was the right decision to bring in Jim Knowles, but as you point out, like, the timeline of doing it this year just could not have been worse. And I don't know if any defensive coordinator would have made it work because, like, you had to go back to a similar style to what you had to Manny Diaz. But there are only a few coordinators that can make that work either. So the main thing is get the talent, right? Whether it's player or personnel, get the talent in the building and then try and figure it out. So I have a hard time faulting any of these decisions. Maybe the Andy Cole-Nicky one in retrospect was a massive miss. But even then, the conversation was he's a guy that adapts to the personnel and will build an offense based on who's on the roster. And the miscalculation of who was on the roster was the problem this year. What they thought the skills of those players were, as opposed to Andy Cole-Nicky's a bum, which has been what the conversation is this year about it. And that's like, you can't get to this level of football and be objectively bad at your job. And so like there's just that, like we said at the beginning, that misalignment has been a big problem. On the opposite side is Matt Patricia, which I thought, oh wow, this is a mistake because of a couple of different things. NFL style defense, Patricia's were notoriously complex, and a style that had kind of gone out of vogue in the NFL, that his New England style one high looks had kind of been figured out without some of the talent that they had on that roster. Why has it been so successful? Because I'm looking at this, and this is what I said on our live show on Wednesday. It's like, I respect that it's working, and I'm just not a fan of this style of defense, so I'm probably on the wrong side here. So why is this working so well when it's kind of a thing that, as long as you know where the blitzes are coming from, you can plan ahead for some of the things that they do. Is at least how I feel. What are they doing that is working so well?
I think, and here, I'll say this for the first time on the record. I think last year when Patricia and Belichick took the year off, they were studying and working for the 33rd team, which, that's an organization that they were working for last year, and doing some things with NFL films and studying the NFL and the college game is what they said they were doing. I think Bill Belichick was studying Jordan Hudson, and I think Matt Patricia was studying college football, because it is not the Belichick defense. It is a beefed up, finely tuned version, because he has the smartest group of 11 I've seen at Ohio State in a few years. It's the smartest group they've had. And so he took the Jim Knowles defense and the assistants that knew the Jim Knowles defense, tweaked it to disguise everything that they do. Mm-hmm. And now it's an NFL system. So Jim Knowles has almost perfected the college system, as long as you know everything that he's going to call, which is what they did in year 3 with him last year, which we just had that conversation. Yeah. Matt Patricia has since taken that and said, okay, this is everything that we could do with Jim Knowles. Matt Guerrieri is one of the major people in that system. Matt Guerrieri, who was with him at Duke, who studied for a year at Indiana, and then came back and is now the safeties coach at Ohio State. He knows Jim Knowles' system better than anyone not named Jim Knowles. He has helped Matt Patricia kind of implement everything that they need to do with this defense. And then, oh, by the way, they disguise everything. They make sure that it's finely tuned. And then they have the players that they have to make it all go. And that's what I think they've done here. It's not that Patricia has brought in a complete Patriot system. He took everything they were running last year with the Jim Knowles stuff. He pared it down, because I think only Jim Knowles can call that style of defense. He did pare it down. Yeah. He disguises everything that they do. And he took the Patriot system of winning based on the personnel you have, and he brought that to college football. But he didn't necessarily bring that one high Patriots defensive system to college football.
Yeah, and I have noticed that they still do operate a lot out of that look, but they'll swing to a cover 2, and especially the Tampa 2 that's super popular now. Yeah. I guess the thing I've been focused on is what's the special wrinkle in every defense? What's the engine driving everything? And to me, it is the front, because you look at the way that they can stem, and Arvell Reese, I think, has been the best player on that defense. In terms of the importance, obviously there are more talented players that are going to go higher in the NFL draft, but Reese has been the guy that makes it work, of being able to drop into coverage, being able to rush the passer, being that guy that Jim Knowles was trying to find, right? That trying to use a player in that style, and have that kind of combo front look. So, I guess how did that all go down? Because it does de-emphasize the pass rushers. And again, Ohio State has been a team that has been a D-end factory. And I know Larry Johnson and that, part of the Ohio State defense is really important. How did they get the buy-in of we're going to really change this up front?
Yeah, it's interesting, because Larry wore a lot of the blame last year for the 4 down, and then not being able to be malleable with Jim Knowles' system, and not using some of the odd fronts and things that Jim kind of got to a little bit in that Iowa game, if I will say. That there was some stack stuff going on, 3-3. I was like, whoa, this is Oklahoma State stuff from Jim.
Yep. Three plays, and they couldn't go all in. I was waiting for it.
And it was reminiscent of 2024, when we saw a 4-play series of the jack position. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who they were playing. It might have been Marshall. Had 45 yards rushing, and they put it away, and I never saw the jack again. So you saw it in glimpses, but he would never quite get there. Larry took a lot of the blame for them doing 4 down, them not being malleable, them not doing anything unique, and then not letting Jim use that jack position. Well, they've kind of tweaked that to where now it's a lot of 5 down. Sometimes there's 3 linebackers on the field, and 2 of them are on the line, and it looks like it's almost a 6-man surface. There's some wacky stuff that they've been doing compared to what we're used to at Ohio State. It's almost completely foreign from what we've seen at Ohio State. We have never seen them, from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. The constant there is Larry Johnson using that 4 down front. He will not stray from it. That's what we've always been told. Now, I think he realizes how good Arvell Reese is. I think he realizes how good Sonny Styles is. Both those guys off the edge are just as good as they are at playing linebacker, and they're really good at playing linebacker. So I think all of those things, and understanding that as a group, they can win that way, has allowed them to not convince Larry. I think Larry is a smart enough guy, obviously, to where he knows what is best for this team. And, I heard 2 weeks ago, Kenyatta Jackson, who's one of the senior leaders of this defense, the defensive end, number 97. I think he's a guy that you need to watch out for this week.
Yep.
Like, hey, I want to rush the passer more. I want to use my pass rush moves more. But caging the pocket is what I've been asked to do, and it's working. So, do I want to do that stuff more? Yeah. So a lot of times you're going to see one side of the pass rush completely just caging one side of the pocket. The other side, hey, go get after it. And if the quarterback escapes through the middle, number 8, Arvell Reese, who's the biggest alien in college football right now on the defensive side of the football, standing there waiting on you, and then he collects the sack. That's why he leads the team in sacks. It's not because he's doing Abdul Carter pass rush things, even though I think he probably could, and we've seen him do some of those things, like the Illinois game is a prime example. He did some of those things. He's kind of always waiting there, though, in the middle, where, hey, we're caging the pocket. The only place to go is forward, and when you go forward, number 8's standing there waiting on you. And so I think that's some of the stuff, which is a really
Do you think that's
down.
a weakness? Can I just jump in here? Because this is the thing I've been wondering is there are a lot of pockets for an Ohio State team especially that are very clean. Like you mentioned that Illinois game, Luke Altmaier, especially in the first half and into the third, was standing there for quite a while without pressure. And so is that a lack of pass rushers, or is that the cage is the plan and you're going to make them uncomfortable in the pocket because they're college quarterbacks, and the longer they stand there, the longer there is a chance for them to do something stupid with the football?
Yeah, there's probably 2 teams that I wonder that against, and that's Indiana and Alabama, because Ty Simpson is very cerebral. He's a great passer, and Fernando Mendoza is the exact same. And you'll talk about that next week. But I think this is a good case study for Penn State to see, before they go against Fernando Mendoza. But yeah, I think Ohio State, it could be a weakness, and I think we will find out a little bit more about that on November 15th, when, oddly enough, Matt Patricia now has to defend Nico Iamaleava. So, there's a chance that if he gets comfortable in the pocket, man, he's going to make you pay. And if he's not comfortable in the pocket, he might still make you pay because he's athletic enough to get out there. It could be. The pushback that I have heard from people that I talked to in the building is, did you see what happened when we wanted to get after Luke Altmaier? Because Arvell Reese took a left tackle with one arm and pushed him back and made a sack, because he has that ability. Because there are NFL folks who are starting to believe that he is a little bit more like Abdul Carter than he is like an off-ball linebacker at the next level. And so, I wonder if when they do push that button, a lot of times they're getting home. Against Arch Manning and the Texas offensive line, which I think is completely terrible now. But at the time, we thought it was pretty decent. When they did want to get after Arch, Arvell was getting after him, whether that was interior pass rush, and they were lining him up in different ways. When they wanted to get after Damon Williams, they put Caden Curry head up on the nose on the center and let him go to work, and he knows that he's quicker than that. And I think you might see a little bit of Caden Curry against Nick Dawkins there in the middle, thinking that Caden might be able to get past him. So, they have done things in small spurts. It's almost like the run game in a way, T. Frank. Like, they've done things in small spurts that show you that they can do it, but when they know that they don't have to, they're just not going to. And that's something that I do question. Is that going to hurt them at some point? But then every time I think, like, man, they're getting no pressure on Luke Altmaier. He's just got all day to throw back there. It's like, okay, call the pass rush play. And Arvell Reese is like, hey, I'm getting home and I'm going to sack the quarterback. And so, that might be a little bit of a deflection. I understand that it sounds like that, but I guess in a roundabout way, I don't know, because they've done it when they've had to, but what happens when they have to and they can't?
Right. And there has been a lot of, with Reese in that kind of tweener position, there's a lot of like blitzing, 5-man pressures to get there. And that does open you up to stuff in the secondary. So I guess that's just been my curiosity. And I appreciate you working through that with me, because I don't want to be wrong. And by the way, to be very clear about this, Penn State is not going to challenge any of these weaknesses, in my opinion. I don't think they have the offense to do that. I'm looking at this more of like, I guess from an Ohio State perspective, or from kind of a neutral perspective of, this team is going to go into the playoff, and where are the weaknesses, and what if Penn State could attack them is available. And that's been because you look at the metrics, you look at some of the data on their pass rush, and it's not bad. Like, they're just not number one, but they are, in a certain sense, not as productive as they have been. And that's been the biggest thing I've been trying to figure out this week. And it is interesting to the conversation about Reese, because that's where the pass rush has come from. I want, like, when they see really good tackles, is he going to be able to do that? I think that's going to be fascinating to watch as like a storyline in college football going forward.
And then one of the most interesting things that they did, and maybe it's not interesting, maybe this proves my ball-knowing bona fides, I don't know, against Washington, which I thought was going to be a real challenge for them. Like, we were going to learn a lot based on what Damon Williams could and couldn't do. They were sending 4, just standard defensive line pressure. They were caging the pocket, and when Damon Williams broke contain and broke that pocket, they didn't have a spy. They had 2 spies. Sonny Styles took one side of the field. Arvell Reese took the other side of the field. And those guys can run with any player in the country not named, not with a wide receiver tag. Like, they can run with tight ends. They can run with running backs. Like, they can do those things. And so when Damon Williams did break contain, Ohio State had 7 sacks in that game.
So it wasn't a 275-pound defensive end, is what you're saying, as your spy?
Man, yeah, I saw that in the Oregon game last year. Well, we don't want Dylan Gabriel to break loose in the pocket, so we're going to send the linebackers on a blitz, and we're going to drop JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer into coverage, and they'll be the spies as well. Yeah, I did see that in the UCLA game, Penn State with Denai Dennis Sutton. Yeah, I mean, it was a choice. The linebackers at Ohio State do a very good job of that quarterback spy. And I think the thing that they've gotten these guys to be is, and the thing that I think is the calling card of this defense is, it's just disciplined. And like, that seems like such a lazy term, whatever. But like, they all do their 111th. And in college football, that is way more rare than people think it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are 19 and 20-year-olds on the field. The best example that I have of that so far this season, and I'm very curious how they do against Kotonicki, because he's going to have some bizarre stuff for them, is Jalen McClain is a second-year safety who was not even expected to start in Lettermen Row, and I think that we do a good job of knowing the pulse of the depth chart. Most of the offseason, we did not have him as a starter. Jalen McClain was not a starter. Malik Hartford was slated to be a starter alongside Caleb Downs. Jalen McClain is a really good player because he's just doing his 111th. Is he Caleb Downs? No. Is he one of the 5 best players on this defense? Probably not. But he does his job in the back end. If there's a trick play, he's not fooled by it because he's not watching that. He's watching what his job is.
Yep.
If there's a run play and he's supposed to help in run support, he's got his nose up there in run support. If there's a deep pass play, he's been in position to not really knock the ball away, but he's in position to, cloud the receiver's vision or jump up when he needs to contest a catch. Like, that is a second-year guy who learned the system in just one offseason under Matt Patricia and now does his 111th, and it works. So, like, these guys all do their job. And in a sport with 19 and 20-year-olds, I think that's harder to do than people realize. They've just figured out a way to get all 11 to just do their jobs.
It is helpful, too, when you've got corners and safeties. And I know what you just said about Jalen McClain, but when you got 3 of those 4 guys that are very talented and they can, in single coverage clamp down. And as you mentioned, Sonny Styles, linebackers, everyone can run on that defense. So if you want to have 2 spies and you're playing man in the secondary, that is a nice luxury to have. And if you have it, use it. Like that, I think that's a really smart thing to do. And by the way, my biggest complaint with Andy Kotelnicki's offense is not, I think, some of the things that we've seen not work out with the quarterback and the run game and all those things. It's the plays you just talked about. I call them the close-up magic plays, where there's one target on the play, and as long as a guy like Jalen McClain is paying attention and is covering that target, the play doesn't have a second plan. Like, it's very frustrating to watch.
Would you say like 4th and goal from the 1 with 5 minutes to go, and Tyler Warren is the only target, and if he's not there, then you got to try to throw it into a really packed middle of the end zone to Khalil Dinkins? Because that's what I saw last year.
Especially when Caleb Downs already has outside leverage on that play, and like you're asking him to run outside. Yes, that's exactly. I'm talking more about plays. I'm talking more about like, hey, let's run a play action fake hard to the right, and then Tyler Warren is gonna like just wander off into the backfield, and he's just gonna be standing back here, and then everyone's like, hey, forget about your best player, and then suddenly Drew Aller has the ball in his hands and he has nowhere to go with the football because The play was a screen that took away all the other options. Everyone else is blocking or running a runoff route. And so anyway, that's just a random rant I had to get on.
No, it's interesting because I have worried about this game now for 2 weeks with, again, and I guess maybe this is where we wrap just because I kind of talked about it at the beginning. That kitchen sink approach, these guys aren't stupid. And Kotelnicki is maybe not great at the current job that he is being asked to do in the exact moment, but he's still a good offensive coordinator, and I think we can probably all agree on that. At least Penn State fans and Ohio State fans can shake and agree that he is a good offensive coordinator who maybe is not right for this moment at Penn State. He's going to have something, and that's the thing that has me worried of does this – and I hate to talk about this, just going on the Penn State channel, does this teeter on a blowout? Is if he tries some of this trick stuff and the run game isn't working, Ohio State's disciplined enough to not worry about the trick stuff and stop the run.
Yep.
And what else is there?
Where is there to go?
Yeah, and maybe that's the same thing, that one read kind of play. Well, if you only have tricks up your sleeve in a run game and the run game gets shut down and the tricks aren't working, what are we accomplishing here?
Yeah.
So I guess
at some point, some basic function of the offense, run or pass in a traditional sense, has to work for Penn State to be competitive in this game. You can't rely on option plays and 2 quarterback systems and all of the little efficiencies in football, all the tags, right? So you can't rely on the tags saving you. The play has to work. And that has been an issue for this team on and off, especially against, some of the better competition over the last 2 years. But this is a good 20-minute conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was great. 20 minutes. That's all we needed. T. Frank, you got it's Wednesday. We can make these by now. Do you have you got a lean score, a something rattling around in that head of yours? What are you thinking this thing looks like?
Yeah, so we've got our official predictions coming out on Thursday. I think
mine comes out on Friday. So yeah.
Oh, lucky you! I'm supposed to have mine in already. Ours are it's Monday morning. They're like, "What's your prediction?" I'm like, "That I have to watch the film." That's my prediction. Is I will be watching the film later. I don't think Penn State gets blown out. I think that they'll play with pride. If it is a blowout, it's a late thing. I just and maybe this is just going off of past experience, but the way Ohio State has been playing on offense, of not trying to blow teams out, of working on the run game, playing that kind of methodical ball and then throwing to the receivers to get some of those chunk plays, it doesn't feel like a game that's going to get out of hand unless Ohio State does something specific to make it get out of hand. If these two teams play the way they have throughout the year, there's not going to be enough drives and possessions for Ohio State to put up 56 or 60 points.
No.
But that is, if there is an upset, I don't think it's Penn State winning. The upset is Ohio State steamrolling Penn State in a way that makes Penn State fans want to, not that they haven't wanted to do this anyway, but fire everyone. Fire, the support staff, me, everybody gets fired
AD,
after a game like that.
President,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Did you, and I guess I don't want to make this into another 20 minutes, but because we've only went 20 minutes. Did you hear what Ryan Day said about Jim Knowles on Tuesday?
I didn't. We talked about it on the show today, but I did not hear it myself, what he said.
Okay. Well, he said the last line was the critical line in the entire operation. He was talking about Jim. He was asked about his relationship with Jim. He was asked about, how it all went down and everything. And he was pretty diplomatic. At the very end of his little diatribe, which I thought was handled really well, he looked straight up at the person who asked the question, got very straight faced, and he said, we all try not to take things personally, but we're all human. And I don't know if he would say that if he wasn't confident going against Jim Knowles' defense, but I think he's kind of confident right now going against Jim Knowles' defense. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Earlier in the week, I said it was going to be 34-13. I'm leaning more if there's a 2-minute situation, I'm not sure how much in the business Ryan Day is going to be to just run the clock out. And so I don't think he's some kind of jerk, but I also think that he is somebody who is a very, very, very serious competitor. So I just wonder, my official score has been all week, and I've kind of stuck by it, 34-13. But I do wonder if there's a way that he might just want to throw one on for good measure, and I
hit the over.
A little bit of a Signetti-ing, if you will, because that's kind of how Kurt operates his business over there in Indiana. Is like, we don't want to throw one on, but if we can, might as well. I just wonder.
Stop it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That idea.
Yeah. I just wonder if there's something like that. And look, man, nobody hates that more than me. As somebody who was, if you will, devastated by the Terrell Pryor Penn State upset, and some of the other Penn State Ohio State games that have broken Ohio State fans' hearts over the years. I know everybody thinks that this is the most lopsided rivalry of all time because since 2016 it's just gone one way. But like the 1-point games and the games before that where Joe Pa and Jim Tressel were going at it and all of those things, like in the 2014 overtime game, like this series deserves everything, I think. And I don't ever call it a rivalry because Ohio State fans will never, ever admit that anyone is a rival other than one team. And I understand that.
Yep.
But this game, whether it's a rivalry or not, deserves more. And it stinks that we have to talk about it like this because especially in the last year that it gets played every year, like these two teams should play every year. And it stinks that this is the final year of it. And it is in this context, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that for Penn State fans and for Penn State moving forward, the point, the not so subtle point is they're tired of coming up on the wrong end and it not being seen as a rivalry, understanding the context of that word for both teams, because Penn State also, I don't know if you know this, their whole brand is unrivaled.
Which
so they also are very proud of.
I respect. So many teams have tried to make them a rivalry, and they have, you are above Pitt, and you're allowed to be above Pitt. You are above Maryland, and you're allowed to be above Maryland. You are above all of those Northeast schools. And
do you remember when they brought in Rutgers and Maryland, and they're like, okay, now you guys fight, and they tried to make it a rivalry, and they're like, we're going to make sure that these two teams are rivals. And it just was like, it was obviously forced. And, that time in Penn State's history where some of those initial games were close, everyone's like, oh, look at that. Here's a rival. And then Penn State went on to dominate those two matchups over the last 10 years. One that I think, and we're total sidetrack here, but I love this conversation. The one that I've thought of as more of Penn State's actual combative, where they have a chance to, and they usually win it, is the Iowa series, where there have been some upsets by Iowa. And even historically, you mentioned going back into the Paterno years, Iowa has always given Penn State a really tough game. They've won some really important ones. They've ended some Penn State seasons where Penn State was on a roll to go somewhere special. They were the impetus to Penn State's awful 2021 year where a lot of their players, got injured. That was a whole bad blood situation. Penn State came back under Manny Diaz the next time they were at home at Penn State, and Penn State had a historic shutout of that offense. There is a bad blood relationship with Iowa, but there's nothing compares to the Ohio State series because Penn State has been so close. They've been just on the heels the entire time, and it's been just that close. And
like Ohio State's never going to have a rival other than Michigan. Like it's just not going to happen. And so it's not Penn State's fault that that's the case with Ohio State.
Yeah.
But again, I do fully appreciate, because I'm a college football enjoyer, that Penn State refuses to make a lesser program a rival. That's just not, don't do that. And so the other one that we can't talk Iowa Penn State without talking about 6-4 though. So like that's the lore of the rivalry. 6-4
luckily that precedes me. Yeah, that precedes me. So luckily I did not consume that one. I went to Penn State, but I wasn't a Penn State fan. Like I grew up only caring about the NFL. So like I didn't really consume all of that until I got here. And then obviously I've been consuming it since then.
I think a 6-4 game film study would be the perfect off-season content at BWI. $1 for your first 7 days.
And we'll take all 7 days to get through it. We're going to go through every play, and we're going to break down every run and every punt. Spencer, this has been a ton of fun. I'm really glad we did this.
I never do long form shows. This has made me kind of want to get into one. I'm not sure what the appetite Ohio State fans will have for me doing one if I get to do one with the Michigan guys, because I don't know if you know this, but when there's a rivalry like that, not only do they not like the team, they don't like the people who cover the team either. So,
Oh yeah.
maybe I don't get to do one with the Michigan folks. I did a 30-minute one with the guys over at the Texas site, but I haven't done a long form one like this in forever. And I had a blast, man. I think I could do this for another 20 minutes, if you will.
If there's one thing Penn State fans know, it's that I am not brief. The short form for me is 20 minutes. But appreciate you, Spencer. And of course, like if you're following along, you're watching this, you can subscribe to both sites over at Lettermen Row and at Blue White Illustrated here on the YouTube and in podcast land. Like, subscribe, all that great stuff. We brought you just straight fire for the last 20 minutes plus 45 minutes. And we're going to be doing that more here on both channels as we go throughout the week. Best of luck to you, Spencer, and enjoy the weekend.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday. I'm hoping for a close game. We'll see what happens, but always appreciate this. Maybe we'll do it again soon.